Have you ever wondered why smart people make stupid decisions? Why we trust our gut feelings, even when the numbers tell a different story? Or why that great deal you jumped on last week doesn't seem so great anymore? Welcome to this summary of Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman, a Nobel Prize-winning psychologist who spent decades uncovering the hidden forces that shape every decision we make. This isn't just a book about thinking. It's a user manual for your brain, revealing why we're predictably irrational and what we can do about it. Over the next hour, we're going to explore the two systems that run your mind, the invisible biases that trip you up daily, and the surprising ways your brain takes shortcuts that sometimes lead you astray. By the end, you'll never look at your own thinking the same way again. Let's dive in. Meet your two minds. Here's the central insight that changes everything. You don't have one way of thinking. You have two completely different systems operating in your head right now. Kahneman calls them System 1 and System 2. And understanding how they work together, and sometimes against each other, is the key to understanding why you do what you do. System 1 is your fast brain. It's automatic, always on, and requires no effort. When you hear an angry voice, System 1 immediately detects the threat. When you see 2 plus 2, System 1 instantly knows it's 4. When you drive down a familiar road, System 1 handles everything while you daydream about lunch. It's intuitive, emotional, and lightning quick. System 2 is your slow brain. It's deliberate, logical, and lazy. System 2 kicks in when you're filling out a tax form, parking in a tight space, or trying to figure out 17 times 24 in your head. It's the part of you that can think through complex problems. But it takes real effort and energy. Here's the catch. System 1 is running your life most of the time, and System 2 is often asleep at the wheel. Think about it this way. Imagine System 1 as an eager intern who works incredibly fast but makes a lot of assumptions. System 2 is the wise supervisor who could catch the mistakes, but they're usually too tired to check the intern's work. So the intern's snap judgments become your decisions, your beliefs, your actions. The laziness of System 2. Let me give you a famous example. Here's a simple problem. A bat and a ball cost $1.10. The bat costs $1 more than the ball. How much does the ball cost? Your System 1 immediately shouts, 10 cents. That just feels right, doesn't it? But hold on. If the ball costs 10 cents and the bat costs $1 more, then the bat costs $1.10. That's a total of $1.20. The right answer is 5 cents. The ball costs 5 cents and the bat costs $1.05. More than half of students at Harvard, MIT, and Princeton get this wrong. Why? Because System 1 jumps to the obvious answer, and System 2 is too lazy to double-check. This isn't about intelligence. It's about how our minds are wired. System 2 requires a real mental effort, and your brain is constantly trying to conserve energy. So unless something feels really difficult to wrong, System 2 lets System 1 call the shots. The problem is, System 1 wasn't designed for the complex world we live in today. It evolved to help our ancestors make split-second survival decisions. Is that a snake or a stick? Friend or foe? Fight or flight? But now we're using that same ancient machinery to make decisions about mortgages, investments, and career choices, and it's not always up to the task. Your brain is brilliant at finding shortcuts. These mental rules of thumb, called heuristics, help you make quick decisions without analyzing every detail. Most of the time, they work beautifully, but sometimes they lead you straight into trouble. Kahneman spent his career studying these shortcuts and the systematic errors they create. Let's explore the big ones. Here's how this works. Your brain judges how likely something is based on how easily examples come to mind. After seeing news coverage of a plane crash, people become terrified of flying, even though you're far more likely to die in a car accident on the way to the airport. Why? Because dramatic plane crashes are vivid and memorable. They're available in your mind, so your brain overestimates the risk. Or think about this. If I ask you whether more people die from shark attacks or from falling airplane parts, what would you guess? Most people say sharks because shark attacks make headlines. But you're 30 times more likely to be killed by falling airplane parts. It's just not exciting enough to report. The availability heuristic makes you a prisoner of your own memories and recent experiences. Whatever comes to mind easily seems more important, more common, more dangerous than it really is. Here's another shortcut that gets us into trouble. Your brain loves to match things to stereotypes and patterns, even when it should be looking at actual probabilities. Kahneman gives us a classic example. Meet Linda. She's 31 years old, single, outspoken, and very bright. She majored in philosophy, was deeply concerned with discrimination and social justice as a student, and participated in anti-nuclear demonstrations. Now, which is more likely? 1. Linda is a bank teller. 2. Linda is a bank teller and is active in the feminist movement. Most people choose option 2. It just feels right given Linda's description. But think about it logically. Every feminist bank teller is also a bank teller, but not every bank teller is a feminist. So option 1 has to be more likely. It's a bigger category. This is called the conjunction fallacy. Your System 1 loves a good story, so it picks the answer that fits the narrative, ignoring basic probability. When details make something feel more representative or typical, your brain thinks it's more likely even when the math says otherwise. Here's one of the most powerful biases of all, and it affects you every day. Anchoring. Whatever number you see first becomes an anchor that pulls all your subsequent judgments toward it. And the scary part is, even when you know the anchor is completely random, it still influences you. In one experiment, Kahneman had people spin a wheel that randomly landed on a number. Then he asked them to estimate the percentage of African nations in the United Nations. People who saw a high number on the wheel gave higher estimates. People who saw a low number gave lower estimates. A random spin of a wheel influenced their judgment about something completely unrelated. This is why the first price you see for a house, a car, or a salary negotiation has such enormous power. It sets the anchor, and everything else is judged relative to that first number. Retailers know this. That's why they show you the original price before the sale price. The higher number anchors your expectations and makes the discount feel more valuable. Even experienced professionals aren't immune. Real estate agents, judges, and physicians all show anchoring effects in their expert judgments. We all want to believe that the world makes sense, that everything happens for a reason. So our brains are constantly constructing stories that explain the past and predict the future. The problem is, these stories are often wrong, but they feel so right. Kahneman calls this the narrative fallacy. We create coherent stories from scattered facts, and once we have that story, we convince ourselves we understand what happened and why.
This is especially dangerous in business and investing. We look at successful companies and tell ourselves clear stories about why they succeeded. The brilliant CEO, the innovative culture, the perfect timing. But Kahneman shows that success often involves far more luck than skill. Yet we can't accept randomness. We need our stories. Here's an uncomfortable truth. You're probably not as good at predicting things as you think you are. Kahneman studied expert predictions for years, from financial analysts forecasting stock prices to political pundits predicting election outcomes. The results were humbling. Experts were barely better than random chance, yet they remained supremely confident in their predictions. One study looked at investors who traded stocks most frequently, the ones who were most confident in their ability to beat the market.
Here's a mind-bending idea. You're actually not one self. You're at least two. The experiencing self, who lives in the present moment, and the remembering self, who tells your life story. And here's the problem. They want different things, and the remembering self usually wins. Kahneman tells the story of a patient listening to a long symphony recording. For 20 minutes, it was glorious. He was deeply moved. Then, in the final moments, there was a terrible screeching sound that ruined the recording. The patient said the noise ruined the whole experience. But did it? His experiencing self had 20 minutes of beauty and just a few seconds of unpleasantness. But his remembering self only stored the ending, and that became the memory of the entire event. This matters because we make decisions to satisfy our remembering self, not our experiencing self. We choose the shorter, more painful medical procedure if it has a less painful ending, rather than the longer procedure with more total pain. We stay an extra day on vacation even though we're exhausted because we want the memory to last longer, even though our experiencing self would rather be home resting. Your remembering self doesn't keep track of duration very well. Instead, it judges experiences based on two things: the peak moment, best or worst, and the end. In one famous study, people put their hands in painfully cold water. One group held their hand in for 60 seconds at a constant painful temperature. Another group did the same 60 seconds, but then had an additional 30 seconds where the water became slightly less cold. Still painful, just less so. Which experience did people rate as worse? The shorter one. Even though the longer one involved more total pain, it ended on a slightly better note. The peak end rule made people prefer the objectively worse option because it had a better ending. This has profound implications. Are you living your life to create good experiences in the moment or good memories to look back on? These aren't always the same thing, and which one really matters? When can you trust your intuition? After all this talk about biases and errors, you might think Kahneman wants you to distrust all intuitive thinking. But that's not quite right. Intuition can be trusted, but only under very specific conditions. You need regular, predictable environments and lots of practice with rapid feedback. A chess master can glance at a board and instantly know the best move. A firefighter can sense when a building is about to collapse. An experienced nurse can detect subtle changes in a patient's condition. Their intuitions are real expertise, developed through thousands of hours in environments where patterns repeat and feedback is immediate. But when you're making predictions in unpredictable environments, like predicting stock markets, long-term business success, or who will make a good romantic partner, your intuitions are probably no better than random guessing, no matter how confident they feel. The key question to ask is, have I had enough practice in a stable environment where I could learn the patterns? If not, be very suspicious of your gut feelings. So what do we do with all this knowledge? How do we make better decisions? First, slow down on important decisions. When something really matters, don't let System 1's quick, confident answers dominate. Wake up System 2 and put in the effort to think it through. Second, use checklists and algorithms. Your intuition is inconsistent and biased, but a simple formula or checklist, even an imperfect one, often outperforms expert judgment.
medical diagnosis, hiring decisions, parole judgments. In all these domains, simple algorithms beat human experts because they're consistent. Third, seek outside views. You're too close to your own situation. What happened to other people in similar situations? That's called the outside view, and it's almost always more accurate than your inside view of your unique special case. Fourth, conduct pre-mortems. Before launching a project, imagine it's failed spectacularly. Now explain why. This simple exercise helps your team surface doubts and concerns that would otherwise remain hidden due to groupthink and overconfidence. Organizations can be wiser than individuals. While individuals are trapped in their biases, organizations have the potential to be more rational, if they're structured correctly. Create decision-making processes that don't allow one person's overconfident intuition to dominate. Gather independent opinions before discussion to avoid groupthink. Use base rates and outside views. Make people accountable for their reasoning process, not just their outcomes. One of Kahneman's key recommendations: separate those who propose ideas from those who evaluate them. When the same person does both, they become emotionally invested in their own ideas and lose objectivity. So what really makes us happy? Let's turn to perhaps the most important question of all: what makes for a good life? And here again, the two-system framework reveals something surprising. We think we know what makes us happy, but we're often wrong. Remember the experiencing self versus the remembering self? They measure well-being differently. The experiencing self cares about how you spend your time moment to moment. And the research shows that what matters most is surprisingly simple: spending time with people you like, being engaged in what you're doing, and avoiding misery like commuting in traffic or dealing with chronic pain. But the remembering self, the one that tells your life story, it cares about different things: achievements, changes, peak moments, and how things end. It wants memorable vacations, career milestones, and a good story to tell. Here's the troubling part. We make decisions based on what our remembering self wants, often at the expense of our experiencing self. We take the high-stress job because it sounds impressive, even though we'll be miserable day to day. We plan elaborate vacations that stress us out because we want the memories and the photos. Nothing in life is as important as you think it is while you are thinking about it. This is Kahneman's focusing illusion. When you think about something, whether it's money, health, marriage, or where you live, it seems enormously important. But in daily life, we don't think about these things constantly. We adapt to our circumstances faster than we expect. Studies show that people who live in California aren't happier than people who live in the Midwest, even though people consistently predict California would make them happier. Why? Because when you think about California, you're focusing on the sunshine. But when you actually live there, you're not thinking about the weather most of the time. You're thinking about traffic, work stress, and relationship problems, just like everyone else. Similarly, people predict that more money will make them much happier. It does help, but less than you'd think, and only to a point. Once your basic needs are met and you're not struggling financially, additional money has diminishing returns on day-to-day happiness. What really affects daily well-being? How you spend your time and who you spend it with. So here we are. After exploring the landscape of the human mind with Daniel Kahneman as our guide, what have we learned? We've learned that you have two minds, one fast and intuitive, one slow and deliberate. The fast one is usually in charge, and it's amazing at what it does, but it wasn't designed for the complex decisions you face in modern life. We've learned that your brain takes shortcuts, and these shortcuts create predictable blind spots. You anchor to the first number you see. You overweight recent vivid memories. You see patterns that aren't there. You're overconfident in your predictions and your understanding of the past. You're not a rational agent who values things consistently. You're loss-averse, you're swayed by how options are framed, and you'll make completely different choices depending on arbitrary reference points. You're not a one unified self. The you who experiences life moment to moment often wants different things than the you who remembers and evaluates your life, and there's no easy answer to which one should win. But here's the most important thing. Awareness is power. You can't eliminate these biases. They're built into the architecture of your brain. But you can recognize them, you can design systems to counteract them, and you can make slightly better decisions as a result. You can slow down when it matters. You can seek outside perspectives. You can question your confident intuitions. You can be appropriately humble about what you know and what you can predict. You can focus more on how you spend your time day to day and less on the achievements and milestones you think will make you happy. The ancient Greek aphorism, "Know thyself," is never been more important or more possible than right now. Daniel Kahneman has given us a map of the territory. We're prone to errors, we're predictably irrational, and we're overconfident about our own thinking. But we're also capable of remarkable things when we understand our limitations and work with them rather than against them. System 1 and System 2, working together, have built civilization. They've created art, science, technology, and everything you see around you. The question isn't whether you'll rely on intuition or analysis. You'll use both. The question is, can you learn when to trust each one? Can you recognize when your fast thinking is leading you astray? Can you make the effort to engage your slow thinking when it really counts? That's the challenge Kahneman leaves us with. Not to become perfectly rational, that's impossible, but to become a little bit wiser about our own minds. And that journey of understanding, it starts right now with the very next decision you make. Thank you for listening.